Okay, so I'll kick off. Hello, everybody. My name's Rob Davidson. Want to welcome you to the webinar. We were really pleased to be asked to do this. I've been really looking forward to this. I'm a product manager at Land Registry, working in the data products and services team, alongside my colleague Alison, who I'll just ask to say hello.
Hi.
Short and sweet. We'll be presenting today presentation on Land Registry data, how to access it, what you can use it for, all of those sort of things. What I wanted to say up front was that we see this as the start of our engagement. We see this as now that the as Isabel mentioned, the coronavirus restrictions have been lifted, we're able to travel again. We're very keen to come and support our colleague Caroline at Geovation, come and be around, be a presence, answer some questions. From a personal point of view, find out what people do with our data is always really interesting. And we're starting it on the 20th of July. So as a follow-up to this presentation, we will be in Geovation that day. If anybody wants to talk about any of the topics raised on this webinar in more detail, we'd love to see you. I've got a content slide, which I won't dwell on, but as I've said, we're going to talk about Land Registry data, how we come to publish it, some of the issues around it, which will explain maybe some of your queries. Look at some of the data sets in more detail that we've picked out, 4 or 5 that we think would be of particular interest to you. Dataset licensing, I know is an area that can throw up a lot of questions. We've got Alison here, who's our contracts manager. She'll be talking about that, the cost of our data, if any, and what we're going to be doing next. So that's just a quick go through the content that we're presenting today. But before that, I'd like to just pass over to Lynn. Lynn Nicholson is our manager. She's the head of all products and services, data products and services at Land Registry. Therefore, she's responsible ultimately for our role in Geovation, our data offerings, the platform that we put it on. So if I just pass over to Lynn to say a few words.
Thanks, Rob. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming today. We do appreciate it because we do look for as many opportunities as we can to talk about what we're doing, and especially as we are currently on the threshold of doing some really exciting things. We've been publishing what we call wholesale data. So first of all, let me just take a step back a little bit and just say, what do we mean by data products and services? What we mean by data products and services is the wholesale data, so the bulk data sets that we publish on our platform every month, as opposed to the traditional work that Land Registry does. So there's a traditional operational side of Land Registry where we register land. That's our core business objective. But our team, the data products and services team, look at all the commercial services that Land Registry run, but also we manage the data, those wholesale data sets. We've been publishing data for the last 8 years, bulk data sets for the last 8 years, and sometimes it's really good now at this stage to wrap some explanations around some of that data, because once it's been out in the market for a while, people get slightly confused. One, they get a little bit confused about what they can and can't do with it. The restrictions aren't that tight, but nonetheless, they get a little bit confused as to what they can and can't do with it. But conversely, they maybe miss opportunities because they don't realise what else we've got or what's in the data sets. And so we're going to try and do, as Rob said, we're going to try and do more of these webinars, but also come out face to face, almost like a roadshow, to explain to customers and users what we've got. What have we got in our toy box, particularly, but also what Rob and Alison are also going to mention is what's our next steps? What are we going to do? So and I'm not going to spoil their presentation, but we are looking at how can we go into those 12 data sets and improve them, improve their findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reusability. So we're going to look at that and spend an awful lot of time and resource next year on improving those data sets. So it's important that the people who use them understand everything about them so that they can help feed in to how can we improve them. So thank you once again, thanks ever so much for attending today. I'm going to pass you over to Rob now, who's going to go through the content of the presentation, and we look forward to your questions at the end. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Lynn. So I'm going to do the first half of the presentation and then pass over to Alison and then come back just to wrap up. So just to start, I always like to start at the beginning, but we're only going to look at this very, very briefly. What does Land Registry actually do? And our core function is to register the ownership of land and property in England and Wales. And in doing so, that provides all owners with a state guaranteed title. We maintain the land register. There are currently 26 million titles and around 88% of land registered as of this month, actually. And we safeguard land and property ownership valued at more than £8 trillion. So I think that it's fair to say that what Land Registry does underpins the UK economy to a certain extent in that vital role of providing that state guaranteed title to land and property. Just out of interest, actually, the illustration on this slide, that's where our offices are located now. The 13 offices spread right across the country there. That's the core function. That's our statutory function, which we're not here to talk about particularly. What we are here to talk about is data publication. So we support the government's open data policy, and we've been doing that since 2010. And the way we can do that is that the data that we gather through the statutory purposes can also be shared with data consumers to benefit the UK economy. So the data products and services team that Lynn leads manage a data portfolio, and we've got commercial products and also the 12 bulk data sets that we're here to talk about in more detail. So that's our team's core function, which is aside to Land Registry's statutory function. And we can that phrase benefit the UK economy. We feel we can do that in several ways. That we can share data that could improve public services. It gives citizens and businesses data to make better decisions, but also importantly for everybody on this webinar today, it allows them to create their own products and services. So that's us. That's data publication. And these are our data sets. So 12 bulk data sets currently published by Land Registry. This is purely an illustration. The links don't actually particularly mean a lot, but all of these data sets are available in some form to Land Registry data consumers. I'll just pick out on the left actually the LLC Inspire data set, which is a series of polygons that shows the extent of local land charges. That's extremely new, as in published last week. So you may, if you're not aware of that, like to take a look at that and access these through the normal means that we'll be covering later in the webinar. So there's our data sets. That's the process that our team manages. I feel this is an important slide on the challenges that sometimes we face, because it could actually answer a few questions that you may already be thinking. So we have several challenges in publishing Land Registry data, which are briefly the risk of registration fraud, data protection considerations, third-party IPR, and also securing the resource to develop the data sets. I'll just very briefly say a little bit more on each one. Unfortunately, we are at the risk of registration fraud when we when we publish bulk data in particular, and registration fraud is basically somebody impersonating the owner to transfer the property away from them. Land Registry has a counter-fraud group that monitors fraud very carefully, so we negotiate very closely with them around the content of our data sets to try to combat that risk. Data protection and GDPR, one of the questions we're often asked is why we don't do more data sets that say more about ownership. And this is where data protection becomes a very important point, that anybody can gain a copy of any register under the open register, but to actually put a data set together that shows the entire ownership of the country would contravene data protection regulations. We'll go on to look at the ownership data sets that we do have, but that is a common question why we can't unfortunately do more on that. Third-party IPR, just briefly, we don't own the addresses. The addresses are owned by Royal Mail, and Ordnance Survey own Mastermap, which our spatial data is based on, and therefore we need to agree with them how their information can be reused, and then we include this within our terms. So they provide a contact point for inclusion if the proposed use falls outside of the agreed use. So we call that signposting, and on our service pages there's very clear instructions of what to do to approach Royal Mail and Ordnance Survey if necessary. And yeah, just lastly on the resource, the data that we put in bulk data sets doesn't exist at Land Registry altogether. It has to be built up. A computer program has to be put together, which typically takes several months to put all the data in the same place, run it as a data set each month so that updates can be provided. And obviously we have to compete for resource to do that against some other very important competing priorities. And these include, I mean, at the moment, I think, as everybody will be aware, that most government departments are after lockdown and the time that was lost there, are suffering some degree of backlogs. So it's quite right that for this year the emphasis is on making sure that people get their applications back as quickly as possible. So it's another point for us to consider that we need the resource and the priority to be able to develop data sets. So those are the challenges, but they don't prevent us from releasing data, and we've managed all of those 12 data sets have been through this process of approval in each of those areas. So just to go on to how users access our data, Land Registry's got its own data platform on gov.uk, and that's called the Use Land and Property Data Service. Its mission is to provide data sets in a way that users will find trouble-free to access, easy to understand, and faster to download. So we've got managed accounts, we've got online licensing, which can be agreed as a click-through process, as opposed to the old system of actually paper forms, and we've got API access. An important point that on our platform pages, and Isabel's mentioned the slides will go out, and the top bullet point has a link to the service. Each specific data set has a technical specification. Now there's a wealth of information in there, technical and also quite a basic introduction to the data set. So I would really recommend that whilst using the data set and before downloading, you have a good look at that, because there's a lot of very useful information in those documents. Okay. I'm going to go on now to look at some specific data sets. So this is where we've picked out some data sets that we feel will be of interest to you. They're all included in on the 12 and on the previous slide. And the first thing I want to emphasize is the UK companies data set. So this is a data set that consists of freehold and leasehold property owned by commercial and corporate bodies in England and Wales. And it's approximately 3.3 million rows of data. That's issued in a CSV file every month. What we don't include is property owned by private individuals, overseas companies and charities are not included in that data set. The data set does include the title number. Therefore, it can be matched with other data sets, most commonly the next data set that we're going to look at. It's free of charge and license permits commercial use. And that's available on the Use Land and Property data service as a full file for the entire records, or a change only update file every month. This is kind of like the sister data set to that. This is the information about land and property owned by overseas companies, and it's much smaller, around 90,000 records. Again, it excludes private individuals for the data protection reasons that I referred to earlier. It excludes UK companies because that's in the UK companies data set. UK companies with overseas addresses and charities. It does obviously exclude UK companies as well. So it's free of charge, and again, the license permits commercial use. So this particular data set has been of interest recently with a lot of the material in the news about overseas ownership, and you may be aware that Companies House are to publish a register of overseas entities, and that register will basically use this overseas companies data set as a starting point for that, to contact owners, so that overseas owners, so that they can register their interest in the land. There's been a few blogs from Companies House recently, if anybody's interested in more details of that register to come. Okay, so I'm just going to hand over to Alison now. She's going to talk about a few more of the data sets, and also the licensing and costs around data sets. So we're going to try sharing. So if you just bear with me a moment, I'm just handing over control to Alison, which I believe I've now done. Alison, do you want to see if you can move on?
Okay, I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
I think that was me.
Yes. Yeah, I didn't move that. So
okay.
Over to you.
Okay, right. So I'm going to talk about the National Polygon Service now, which is our index polygons for England and Wales. And each polygon shows the indicative position of a registered title. The dataset service consists of 3 chargeable datasets. You get 3 for the price of 1. There's the polygon dataset, a title descriptor dataset, and a title number and UPRN lookup dataset. The files can be matched and merged with data from other government agencies and other datasets available from Land Registry using the title number and UPRN cross-referencing. And this dataset is the data that's available to Geovation members free of charge on a developer license, through which you can obtain that by contacting Caroline. You contact at Geovation. The dataset, as I said, is in 3 separate datasets. The polygon dataset includes obviously the polygon, a polygon ID number. The title number is embedded within the shapefile, and the creation date. We provide a full file every month and also a change only update file. The title descriptor dataset is the tenure of the title, so you'll get the freehold and the leasehold estate indicator, and also the class of title. With the UPRN dataset, that's the title number and the UPRN. The dataset doesn't include the address, so we've included the UPRN for reference for you. It's our chargeable dataset, and it's the most expensive dataset that we publish. and it's the data set is what we call our crown jewels, and it's the most popular data set for our customers. It's the most popular spatial data set for our customers. I'm trying to move on. I'll move on to price paid data now. This is our open data set, which is published under Open Government License. It's a monthly data set and contains all property sales received by Land Registry in the previous month, and it is the only source of actual price paid data available on the market. It's free of charge, it's open and reusable, and it's the most comprehensive source of data for property portal websites, and it's used by the likes of Zoopla, XE, and Rightmove. It's an absolutely massive data set, and it's available for all house sales since 1995, and although it's published under OGL, it is because it includes addresses that we do include, as Rob mentioned before, signposting to Royal Mail in relation to the addresses, and there is specific signposting as to how you can use those addresses, but a contact point for Royal Mail if your intended use goes outside of those uses for the addresses. It includes the price, the date of the transfer, the property type. There is a new build indicator in the data set, so you can tell if the property is new or if it's an existing property. It includes the tenure and the address of the property. It's a really valuable data set, and it is, I think, the biggest open data set in the world, I think, because it includes more than 27 million records of house sales, and it is widely used. Registered leases is a data that we published in 2020, and it's a data set that shows all registered leasehold land in England and Wales. It includes the property description and the date of the lease and how long it lasts. It's quite a big data set, and includes about 5 million records. There's varied licensing options that allow for commercial use for this data set, direct use, which is internal business use or research purposes, and we also put this out on exploration terms, which we'll go into in a bit more detail when we talk about licensing later in the presentation. Leases that are granted for a period in excess of 7 years are registered at Land Registry, so this data set includes anything that's registered for more than 7 years. The data set also includes UPRN, so can be matched with our National Polygon Service, and as I said, it was published in 2020, so it's not been available for very long, but we do have a significant amount of users of this data set now. So going to move on to licensing now. We've currently got 5 licensing options, and 4 of them relate to data published on our Use Land and Property data service, and 1, the developer license, which relates purely to Geovation members. So in 2020, as I said, we launched a mixed licensing model for 2 of our data sets, the leases data set and our restrictive covenants data set, which I'll discuss shortly. The way we license data has evolved over the years and changed quite a lot mainly due to changes in government policy with moves to open data. And as Rob mentioned at the beginning of the presentation before, our data programme has supported this, and we do try to make as much of our data available as possible and as open as possible. So we support the use of open government licensing as much as we can. And although we have to license some of our data to protect our IPR and that of third parties, we do in most circumstances, as much as possible, put our data out as free of charge. And where we do make a charge for our data, it is for commercial use. We do so on a cost recovery basis. And this next slide covers which data sets are chargeable and which are free of charge and which are under a mixed model. And as you can see from this slide, the majority of our data sets that we publish are available free of charge. I mentioned before, the National Polygon Service is the chargeable data set. Registered leases and restricted covenants, you can are under the mixed model that I mentioned. The mixed model is a licensing model that we introduced with our latest data sets, and this allowed users for the first time to try out data under exploration terms before they committed to purchasing the data for commercial reuse, while also allowing the data to be used for internal business use and research purposes under a direct use license free of charge. When we reviewed this approach, we did receive really good feedback. So it's not, it might seem a bit odd to have so many licenses in play, but as I said before, it has evolved over time. It's not probably an ideal situation, but that's the approach that we have at this time. So I'll talk to you now about what you can do with our data and under each of the licensing types. We try not to be too prescriptive about what you can do, as we do try to promote innovation and the use of our with the use of our data and to try and stimulate the UK economy. So under the open government license, you are encouraged to use and reuse the information that is available freely and flexibly, and only with only a few conditions. Under the commercial license, you're allowed to use the data in a product or service that you'll sell, and you must add or combine data to make your product. We don't allow reselling of our data, so you must make a service or a product with the data. The direct use license allows you to use the data for research or for personal use or for your work, so for internal business use. The exploration license, which is a new license, allows you to take the data for 3 months to see if you can make a product or service to sell. And you can put the data in a product or a service or as a prototype and show it to your user or your customer to see if you've got a viable product to sell. And then there's the developer license, which we mentioned before, which is available to you guys as Geovation members for the National Polygon Service. And you get to use the National Polygon Service for 12 months under the same terms as the exploration license. So you can put that data in products and services or prototypes and then use it to demonstrate those services to users or customers. And Caroline can assist you with that option if you want to take National Polygon Service. So as I said before, we don't specifically tell you what you can do in our licenses. We don't want to be prescriptive. We want you to come up with some innovation and some ideas, which, as Rob said before, we're keen to hear what you want to do with our data and what you are doing. But we are quite specific about what you can't do. So, to be honest, there isn't a lot you can't do, but we try to sort of set out here so it's very clear. So we don't allow direct marketing with our data, and the main reason for this is reputational. We don't want people contacting people in relation to our data and then people complaining to us. So direct marketing is definitely out. We don't, as I said before, allow reselling of our data as a wholesale product. You have to add value to the data to sell it. So we don't allow you to republish or resell our data as a standalone product. And obviously any purpose against the law or regulations. But it is really important that you read the license and you consider the full list of restrictions before agreeing each dataset license. I know it's very simple and it seems very easy to agree something online, especially if you're just accepting the license, but it is important that you read those restrictions. We do have audit requirements in each of our licenses, and they contain audit requirements that you should be aware of. We do reserve the right to inspect your records in relation to your use of the data, and you are required to keep end user records if you make any commercial use of the data in any products or services, which we also reserve the right to audit. So you need to be aware of those. So. Lynn mentioned at the beginning that we are looking at enhancing and making our data sets better for all of our users. So we did a review last year of our existing data sets, and I'm not sure, obviously we don't know who's here because we can't see you, but we did work with the Geovation members last year, looking at the data sets and getting some feedback from them. We did a large piece of work looking at how people found the data, how accessible they found it, how interoperable and reusable. And we did a massive piece of work with our internal data science team, and we've now found potential areas where we can improve our data sets, and we have a plan of improvements prepared to work on next year. These are looking at different things that we can improve. So we're looking at improving our UPRN match rates. We're looking at additional attributes that we can add to the data. We're also looking at API access and improving the frequency of updates of our data sets, and these are all in line with the feedback that we got last year. But as Lynn said, we're continuing to engage with all of our data users over the next few months and before we start the work next year to continue to assess the improvements that we need to make, and hopefully we'll start work on those next year. And I'll hand back to Rob now.
Okay, thank you, Alison. So that's the end of the main bulk of the presentation. As we said, these slides will go out, and we wanted to leave you with some contact details. I presume that the most of you will know Caroline, and she's the stakeholder manager down at Geovation, and there's contact details there for myself and Alison. We're happy for you to email questions to us at any point. We're happy to answer anything data related. If we don't know the answer, we'll find somebody who does and get back to you. Just before we go on to any questions today, I just wanted to ask Lynn, sorry to put you on the spot. Was there anything that you wanted to add to any of that, to any of the slides that you've seen there?
No, there's nothing. I think that covers the key messages that we wanted to give out today, because I think too much information all at once, it would be a bit bamboozling for people. But I'd be quite interested if there are any sort of questions around that. There's obviously a lot more detail around some of the improvement work that we're looking at next year that Alison's mentioned and I mentioned earlier, and we will be coming back out to Geovation members as part of a re-engagement exercise. We've done what we called the pre-discovery on that. So as Alison mentioned, we sort of know the themes that people are most interested in as improving. It's the detail behind those themes, really. What does an API strategy actually look like? And what are the benefits of doing that API strategy? So like I say, we've got to put some more detail. So we're going to move from the pre-discovery phase into a full discovery, hopefully sooner rather than later. So we will be re-engaging with people after that. But other than that, Rob, no, I think that's covered all the key messages that we'd like to get out today. And I'd be interested to know from anybody that's attended today, if there is a part 2 to this webinar, what would that part 2 look like? What would it need to include? What do the participants think we haven't covered or would like to see us cover, either in more detail or a new subject? So yeah, so thanks Rob and Alison. That was really comprehensive.
That's great, thank you, Lynn. So yeah, Lynn mentioned the engagement strategy there, and just to remind you that that's going to kick off with us visiting Caroline on the 20th of July. So if you are able to get down to Geovation and you want to chat about any of our data sets, we'd be happy to see you. For today, I will, if I can move the mouse, yep, just go on to questions and pass you back to Isabel.
Fabulous, thank you so much. That was a lot of information. I know that it's very, you know, there's a lot that you have to wrap your head around and try and figure out how it fits into your own services and products. But you know, there's been a few questions that we've had coming in. Please put them into the question section now. If you do have specific questions that you would like us to ask the experts today, then we'll make sure that we'll get through as many as we possibly can. Like I said, if we are going to go beyond the hour, please don't be alarmed. We want to make sure that we cover as much of the content as possible to give you the most benefit. So if you have to dash off, we have the recording, so we will be able to share that with you, and you'll be able to catch up on anything that you've missed, or indeed rewatch the whole thing and, you know, help yourself, like help your brain sort of take it all in. But I'll kick off with, and I'll just go in the order as they come in. So please bear with if we're not going to get to your question until a bit later. But so the first question was, what is an NPS member and how do you become one? I'm particularly interested in the NPS data.
So the Geovation member is a member of Geovation, and you can obtain the National Polygon service if you're a member of Geovation. So
fabulous. Yes,
yeah, I did.
So go on,
oh,
Rob.
Sorry.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I think as Alison mentioned, that's the premium data set that is paid for ordinarily, but it comes with Geovation membership for a year to allow you to look at it to decide if it's useful for your products and services.
Yes, and to add there, because I think it was a question, and I have posted that into the chat, so hopefully you have all been able to see the link that I've shared in terms of our website link where you can sign up as a new Geovation member. And if you're signing up as an individual, that is free of charge. So you'll just have to go through a rigorous process with Noreen, our hub manager, to make sure that you are the right member for us and that you are in the relevant sectors, because we're not quite as open as other cohabit or co-working spaces like WeWork or Second Home, because we very much focus on the geospatial and the PropTech data and industry. So, but yeah, please feel free to check that out on the website and sign up as a new member there. And then the next question following on from that, I suppose, again, if we've covered some of these, it's maybe good to reiterate some of them, but just if not, then what data sets can I expect with the Polygon as opposed to the URM? So where are the key differences, I presume, is the question there.
What was the question, Isabel? What was the question again? What's the difference?
So what data sets can I expect with the Polygon as obviously the National Polygon Service as opposed to the URM?
The UPRN. So when we talked about the.
Well, is that what they mean? Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. I just read it out as it comes in. I apologize. I presume they. I presume they mean the.
Yeah. So when we've talked about the improvements that we're planning for next year, one of the themes that we're looking into is known as additional attributes. So with the data sets that we've got, what additional attributes do we need to put into the data sets to make them more usable? UPRNs is one of them. However, 2 of our data sets already include UPRNs. So where we have a difficulty is matching the UPRNs to title numbers. So Land Registry work on title numbers. So when people buy pieces of land and register them with us, it's you are registering a title to land. So you're registering a freehold title to land, or a freehold estate in land, or a leasehold estate in land, and it's allocated a title number. There's over 28 million title numbers on the land register that make up the land register. Now, a title could be a toilet at the back of somebody's house, or it could be a huge housing estate. So matching UPRNs to title numbers, I wouldn't say it was impossible, but it's challenging. Now, the closest we've come within the National Polygon Service, as Alison mentioned, the Polygon Service is made up of three separate files, and one of those files contains the UPRNs. So it's almost like a lookup table. So it matches where we can the UPRN to the title number. And at the moment, we've managed to match about, it's around about 87% of our title numbers to UPRNs. So part of the improvement work that we're looking at next year is improving that match rate and then adding that UPRN into other data sets. So National Polygon Service contains it, Lisa's data set contains it. We are looking at adding UPRNs to the other data sets, so you've got something linkable across all the data sets. So hopefully that's answered it, but it's Rob, Alison, is there anything you wanted to add to that, or has that answered the question, do we think?
I think so. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think so. The National Polygon Service is 3 data sets. So you get a polygon file with the spatial element, and then the UPRN file that Lynn's just talked about, and then another file that has a title number and the tenure details. So it's called the National Polygon Service because it's made up of 3 data sets. So, which hopefully that's clear.
Thank you so much. Yeah, if something is not clear, or if as a result of the response you have a follow-up question, of course, just fire that into the question section, and I'll make sure I'll get back around to that as well. Is the price paid data linked to UPRN?
It isn't at this time. I hope that we can make it linkable to UPRN. Like Lynn said, though, it is a big piece of work because not all property or title numbers has a UPRN. So, and I'm not sure it's something that we could do retrospectively. It might only be something that we could do with the monthly files going forwards, because UPRNs tend to stay the same, but addresses change. You know, with address changes, people change the name of their houses and stuff, and so it could be quite difficult to do for all of the old stuff, but we might be able to do it going forwards. But it's part of our investigations that we're looking at the next year's work. But yeah, if we can do it, I hope we can do it. Yeah.
Sounds good. We'll be sure to keep you posted when that happens, or if. The next question is, how does the National Polygon Service deal with flats? A block of flats with each flat having a unique UPRN will all belong to a single polygon. Does your lookup have a one-to-many relationships to account for this?
Right, so without getting too complicated on this, as we're sitting outside of the data products and services team, we've also got a programme of work called Transforming Our Data Programme, and there's a project there looking at structuring or restructuring the information on the register. So the bulk data sets that we've created are data sets that have been created from information that sits on the land register. So what we're doing, and that information, even though we call it intelligent, it's not really that intelligent, not in today's world. It was in the 80s, it was very intelligent in the 80s, but now it's not intelligent enough. So in today's world, machines can't read it. What we're doing is we've got a 3-year project underway, and that 3-year project is looking at restructuring that data and enabling it to be read by machines, and that will help enormously in the future with numerous things. We haven't got time to talk about them all today, but one of those things is building relationships. So we're looking at the moment with building relationships between freehold and leasehold, and that's what I think the nub of this question is. So lots of people have come back to us and fed back to us that where they struggle is that we're taking the block of flats analogy that we've said there. The actual building itself could be freehold, and everything within it could be leasehold. So, but if you take that leasehold in isolation, it's tracking back to what is the freehold, and this is where we're getting a lot of feedback in. Can you build that relationship between leasehold and freehold? as we stand today, the information on the register is not intelligent enough, but it will be. And at the moment, the team have to focus on one element at a time. And at the moment, they are focusing on relationships, and that is relationships between freehold and leasehold. And then also, if a mortgage, sometimes mortgages fall across 4 or 5 properties, and it's building that relationship with that as well. So the whole epic that the team are working on at the moment is relationships. It's a big epic, and it's going to take them several months to do, but we're hoping that by the end of this year we will have much more sophisticated information and much more and a better way of being able to build relationships. And that work that team are doing will feed into the improvement work that the data products and services team will be looking into next year. We've got to look at that project and build into our improvement pipeline the opportunities that those transforming our data products and services will create for us, and building relationships is one of them.
Thank you. Very elaborate, which is great. Hopefully that answered the question. Again, if you've got any follow-up questions, do let us know. This is a big one, so bear with me. Hopefully it will make sense when I read it out to you. So great to hear about API access improvements. Our company has e-services and business gateway access, but despite having a highly technical set of staff, we struggle to get online owner verification up and running. We couldn't even authenticate, and we had to use a recommended provider who had previously built an integration with you. My question is the OOV in the roadmap to modernize its API from an old SOAP implementation to a modern REST implementation? Does that make sense?
Simple answer to that is no. Simple answer to that is no. It's not on our list of improvements for next year, but I think, please can you contact us about that, because certainly if you could contact the 3 of us, because I think this is something that we need to look at. If people have, if somebody is a business gateway customer and they're struggling to get onto online owner verification, then we need to hear about that, and we need to, is it something we need to address outside of these improvements on the data sets? Because online owner verification isn't a data set. It's a service, it's a commercial service. So, but that's something that's in mine and Alison and Rob's control. So if you could contact any one of us really, and let's investigate that offline with you. That's an interesting issue that you've got there. Probably not interesting to you, but it's interesting to us. That's it for you.
Fabulous. Rob, if you don't mind going back one slide, and if we can grab your details just to have that on the screen while we're still going through questions, and everyone can drop down those contact details there as well. That's great.
Yeah, apologies, Lynn's not on there, but as you can see, the format is the same. It will be lynn.nicholson at Land Registry. So sorry for missing you off that, Lynn.
No, that's absolutely fine, Rob. I'm silent.
I'm sure you'll see her in. Wonderful. So I guess speaking of change there, then are you able to disclose any of the changes that you might be planning in the data set at all?
I think we can safely say what the themes are. So that the themes are additional attributes, as I've already mentioned. And one of the biggest problems that users were having were that all those bulk data sets that Rob and Alison have spoken about are published on our publication portal every month. And for a lot of organisations, that doesn't suit their business needs, because you'll get to week 3 in the month and that data is already far too much out of date for their business needs. So what they've said is what they prefer is a live access into that data. And we've used the expression, they want the data they want when they want it. So in other words, they don't want the whole of the national data set, the national data polygon data set sent to them every single month, or a change only update file every month. What they want to be able to do is have a live feed into that data and be able to get the data they want when they want it. So that's another one that we're seriously looking at, because certainly with National Polygon Service, that's still, even though it was launched in 2015, is still in its growth stage of its product life cycle. So it's still growing, hasn't matured yet. We're still getting new customers on every year, even though it's been out there for so long. But in order to prolong that growth phase, we're looking at, and this is what most customers have asked for, is some sort of live feed, well, a feed into it, so that they can pull out the data they want when they want it. So that's probably the biggest and most complex one that we're looking at. A lot of the improvements are around improving metadata and the findability of that information. But I think where we scored quite low was on interoperability. So that's one of the reasons why we want to come out and visit the market again, into what are your thoughts on how we could improve the interoperability of that. So Rob, Alison, is there anything you wanted to add to what I've said?
I mean, just that really, Linda, we really want it to be user-led, and we've already done, you know, a fair bit of engagement, but, you know, it needs to change. Any changes that we investigate, and unfortunately we can't make promises, will be user-led. I mean, we hear UPRNs a lot, you know, people request that, so that's an area we'd want to look at. But yeah, talk to us on the 20th of July about that. Would be great to hear.
And as a follow-on, do you publish the roadmap that you're working on somehow, so you know that other startups or people who use that can plan ahead?
I don't think we're confident enough to publish it at the moment. We've got a very high level one, but there's still a lot. We still want to embark on a more forensic discovery before we feel confident enough to publish it. I'd hate to publish it at this stage, because there's still so many dependencies on it. A lot of some of the projects that are underway in the Transforming Our Data program are developing the infrastructure that we need in order to carry out some of these improvements. So there's quite a lot of internal dependencies on that. So we don't feel confident enough at the moment to. It's not in a strong enough position at the moment for us to publish it. But you know, once we've done this additional piece of discovery, it will be.
That makes sense. And of course, if you are a Geovation member and you are in contact with Caroline, I'm sure you'll be able to ask her sort of as things progress, you know, where things are at and how you can prepare yourself for any of those changes. Is there a simple way of making or matching, sorry, a UPRN to a property on a price paid data set? I know we're jumping around a little bit here. But.
It can be done, because we have many users who've done it using the address that's supplied. The address that's supplied in the price paid comes from the Land Registry Property Gazetteer. It's not the same address format that's in some of our other data sets, but it is the format is more user friendly, we've been told by users of the data set. So it is it is possible, and I think several users have told us that they've managed to get like an 80% hit rate with UPRN from that address. So it is possible, but we've also been asked many times to put the UPRN in there. So yeah, addresses and UPRNs are seen as the you know, the silver bullet, but I think there are issues because of the issues that we have with missing UPRNs and the relationship issues with one-to-many. But yeah, it can be done, but it's not in all cases. So.
And is price data therefore unlinkable to the NPS data?
Again, it can be done, but it's not easy, which is why we're trying to do this fair work.
Absolutely. And can you get all the information from the price paid data that's on the title register?
No, some of the price paid data is subject to some exclusions. So we don't publish everything in price paid data. Most registers will include the price paid. There is a price paid entry on the register in most circumstances, or a value stated as being paid on the register. If a property is sold on divorce, so we call that a 2-to-1 transfer, that won't be included in the price paid because it's not a full market value transaction. If it's a right to buy sale, it won't be in price paid data, but it will the register entry will be on there, the value paid will be on the register. So there are a list of exclusions on the price paid web pages on our website. So not everything will be in price paid, but some will be on the register, some of it will be on the register. So yeah.
Okie dokie. Thank you so much for that. So the National Polygon Service, after the 12-month trial, seems to be a fixed price per year. Is there thought to a patty as you go? Oh, I should have looked at that first. As you go for API calls models in future? I'm not sure. Sorry.
Pay as you go.
I would assume it's meant to be pay as you go. Yes. Sorry.
I think
yes,
that,
okay. Yeah.
Obviously, when we look at our API strategy, we'd have to look at pricing when we do that, won't we, Lynn? But so yeah, that'll all be in the mix when we look at the API strategy, because obviously we might. I don't think we'll ever go down a royalty basis like OS have, but we might have an annual subscription fee, or I don't know. We haven't got to that stage yet, but yeah, it could be based on usage, or I don't know. We don't know. It's the unknown yet, but yeah.
Yeah. So obviously that links to another question where the question is, are there any likely changes to the cost of the NPS anytime? So I presume that's something that you'll look into as well as part of that process.
Yeah, I mean, you can get NPS, you can buy it in instalments, so you don't have to pay the £20,000 up front. You can buy it in £5,000 instalments, so over the year.
Fab. And is there a free model for startups looking to test their business models? So when it's not quite ready for market, I presume.
No, there's only the 12 months developer period at this point.
There's only the sample data though. There's the sample data, Alison, isn't there? That we've got. There is a sample that you can do, but whether that is the same, would have the same benefits, but the Bristol sample that users can download, isn't there? But in terms of the whole data set, no. Coming back to what Alison was saying, we've got everything is in the mix next year. So when we're looking at, if we look at the pricing, we're going to be looking at the products, the pricing, everything. We're going to revisit every aspect of that. And this comes back to what Rob was saying. It's all going to be user-centric. So it will be, and I know that's a phrase that everybody uses these days, but we absolutely mean it, that it's going to be based on what are our users actually saying, because the whole reason for us doing it is to drive economic growth, and it's to drive businesses, and that's why we're doing it. So it's all going to be based on what are users saying. So is the pricing a barrier to entry? Is there something we can do? Is there by revisiting that? And also, like Alison said, once we've got a different way of serving that information up, do we make that pricing a bit more palatable? Everything is in the mix next year, and that's why it's important that's why today was important in getting everybody on that stepping stone of understanding what we've currently got, but also helping us to move to the next stage. And that's, I just wanted to add as well, what we haven't mentioned today is, over the next couple of years, our intention isn't to package up and publish new data. We're not, because Land Registry's got far more data than those 12 data sets. Our priority is getting the existing data right before we publish any more. So that's why it's important we get feedback so that people can tell us what is it we need to be doing.
Fantastic. And speaking of feedback, I have shared our SurveyMonkey link there in the chat for you as well earlier. So we always look forward to getting the feedback from these sessions to understand what was particularly useful, what might have needed more content, for example. And as previously mentioned, we're looking to maybe have another session as a follow-up. So please use that feedback form as an opportunity to raise, what kind of content and what sort of topics, or what would you like to see more of in this instance, so that we can make sure that we deliver some of these workshops, or indeed another webinar for you that is relevant and that will be most beneficial to you. So that's definitely one way to make sure that you have your say. So don't be shy to let us know what you thought, and also what you'd like to see more of in the future. We'll go back to just a few more sort of, I guess, more technical questions there, move away from pricing now. Is the assumption right that the National Polygon Service Special Elements uses a list of latitude and longitude to define a polygon?
I'm looking at an Alison's looking at me. I think I think I'm reasonably confident in saying yes, it does, because it has coordinates in, doesn't it, Alison?
Yeah, it's got the XY coordinates in. Yeah. I think
nice and easy.
yeah. I think that's more covered in. There is a technical specification document for it. It's more covered. It's covered in there.
Okay, great. And another question is, could ground rent be included in the lease data set? Could that be an option?
We don't include the rent in the lease data set because it's a field that has changed over the years. We used to include the rent in the entry that we put on the register. And change in practice has changed several times over the years, and we don't include it anymore. So we took the decision not to include it because it wouldn't be consistent. So we've gone from it being a peppercorn at some stages in life to thousands of pounds to a nominal rent, and then to stating as therein mentioned, because sometimes it's difficult to find in a 57-page lease what the rent was. So we took the decision to exclude it. So we don't publish it, and we don't include it in the entry anymore, and we don't include it in the data set.
Great, okay, thank you. And then this is the last question, I think. Oh, no, wait, I've got one more coming in, so let's do 2 more questions. So this is your last chance to make sure that you ask your question. But of course, we appreciate that this is a lot of information to take on. So if you do have any questions, of course, as you can see there, you can message the team directly or reach out to us at Geovation at any point in time. If you've got any more questions, we'll make sure that the questions are relayed to the team so that you can get your expert answer. Is there any intention to move away from the National Polygon Service provided as a shapefile, maybe something a bit more modern like a geopackage or database access?
I think this comes back to the statement we made earlier. Anything is in the mix. Everything is in the mix for next year. So we've now, Land Registry have recently created a data science function, and they're bringing in some very interesting ways of us being able, because for us that have been working in this space for a long time, it's what is the art of the possible, and this data science team have certainly helped. They're new to Land Registry, we've only had them in for a year, but we're working with them on what could the art of the possible actually look like. And so, as you know, it comes back to my point, everything is on the table and everything is in the mix, and so we'll be looking at all sorts of ways. So I think the simple answer is yes, we'll be looking at it, and our data science team will be able to advise us on what's sensible to take forward and what isn't.
Great, and that leads nicely into the next question. How are you planning to keep people or companies up to date with these fundamental changes you're planning for next year, like the API quotas or changing costings, accessing data as we need it versus monthly data dumps? So is there a process or a thought process already in place in terms of how that will get communicated?
I think that's a really good question, to be honest. And so Today, for example, was Rob and Alison's idea. So I'm going to give you a hospital pass now, guys. what are your thoughts on continuing this great work today? What's your thoughts on continuing with that?
Well, I think, you know, I said at the start that we want to be visible in Geovation, and you know, everybody knows about the pandemic and what that's meant. So that is a promise that we're going to be there. What I would say is that any sort of major changes to data set would be subject to a full comms plan. Land Registry's got a central comms team that will take all stakeholders into account. But in terms of Geovation members, we're hoping that the actual regular contact will start to do that, which, you know, again, I've banged on about this. 20th of July is when we're making our start. But any major changes will be communicated really fully through a full comms plan.
Okay. Fabulous.
Okay.
Of course, yeah, and of course, you know, we'll keep a tap on it as well in terms of Geovation. So if you are a Geovation member, we will of course make sure that you are as much in the loop as we can possibly make sure you are. So yeah. And I think one more question, just again a bit more technical. Any plans to add the title number directly into the leasehold data sets, or is there a reason why that's not going to be the case?
There is a reason why, and when I mentioned, do you remember the slide, the challenges to publishing data? The first point was registration fraud. It's unfortunate to talk about because obviously most people are completely honest, but the Counter Fraud Group do inform us that having the title numbers out there in bulk, you know, the lease data set is a 5 million row data set, does increase the threat of registration fraud. So it would be wrong for us to say that that's likely to happen. That's probably a change that we can't make. What we did do was introduced a unique ID into the data set to allow it to be mixed with other data sets. There's not many got that at the moment. We could, as part of the changes that Lynn's outlined, we could look at that, inserting that into more data sets to allow everything to be linked together. But an honest answer is that it's unlikely we're going to be able to add title numbers to data sets, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, this is all the questions we've had. Thank you so much for all the questions that you've submitted. You've definitely kept our speakers on the toes. Thank you so much again for joining today. I hope you found this useful, and again, we appreciate this is a lot of information, so please don't hesitate to reach out to us. As mentioned, if you can take sort of 3 to 4 minutes just to complete the survey form that is in the chat, but also will be emailed to you along with the recording of this session, then please take that time just to let us know, you know, how we did, what you thought went really well, and what you'd like to see more of in the future, so we can make sure we tailor these sessions as much to your needs as we possibly can. Thank you so much, Alison, Lynn, Rob. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, and also thanks to everyone who's messaged their thanks in the chat. You know, it's been a real pleasure to get this session up and running, and I'm looking forward to hosting some more. So yeah, thank you so very much. Like I said, you'll receive an email with all the details, all the information, probably for the end of today. So have a look out for that, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the afternoon. Any final, Lynn, Alison, Rob, any final remarks from you guys that you would like to send everyone away with today?
Just thanks for joining, and hope to see you all shortly in Geovation face to face, and take care.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Have a lovely day, everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.